Welcome to the Security by Default podcast. I'm Joseph Carson, host of the show. In each episode, we make cybersecurity simple with amazing guests who share real-world experiences and insights. So let's get security by default. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Security by Default podcast. I'm the host of the show, Joe Carson, and it's a pleasure to be here with you all again. I'm really excited because we always look at, the chaos world that we live in. It's always changing. There's always fun things. There's new technologies, and it's ever evolving. And sometimes in the security world, we live in a bit of chaos, and I try to sometimes bring clarity to that chaos so you can actually see, the light and see what great things we're doing in the industry, and to really make it a positive experience, because that's what we're really here to do, is make the world a safer place. And I'm really excited about having another guest for you this week. I've got Michael joining me. So Michael, maybe you can give the audience a little bit of a background about yourself, how you got into the industry, maybe some interesting things about yourself, and a bit about what you do as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joseph. It's a pleasure to be on the show with you today, and really excited to chat about such an interesting topic. Michael Waite here. Just a little bit of background about myself. I started my career after graduating university in the tech space, got right into consulting. And for about 10 years, I worked with Accenture, and that's really where I cut my teeth in tech, doing projects with Fortune 50, Fortune 500 companies, large-scale implementations, migrations to the cloud, data science, data visualization, basically anything, you name it, was doing that. But the way that I got into the cybersecurity space is actually very fascinating. This point is about 3 years ago. I was flying to Madeira, Portugal, to visit a friend of mine. And I flew through JFK, and there was a major cybersecurity incident at JFK that day. So the flight was delayed, and there oddly was only about 30 people on this flight. And so I board the plane, and it's just me and one other guy in this section of the plane. And I'm quite a yapper, so started chatting him up, I think to his chagrin. But we started talking about what we were doing, and he was like, I've been in the cybersecurity space for a long time. I want to go and start my own business. And he pitched me on the version 0 idea of Dune Security. And I loved it. And we learned it in this conversation that our skill sets are really complementary. I've been in tech for a long time and have built really robust and large scalable systems. And my business partner, he had been in sales and go-to-market and revenue strategy. So we realized at that point, and we're like, let's do this. And so, yeah, that's how I got into the cybersecurity space. And it's been a ton of fun being in the space, especially now. And everything that we're going to talk about today, I think, is incredibly poignant, because AI is such an incredible tool. There's so much power and utility there, both for good and for evil. And I think we're starting to see the fruits of that. So an interesting topic, and very excited to chat today. And thank you for having me on.
No, it's a pleasure to have you on. And I completely agree. Sometimes it's all about being in the right place at the right time. And I've been fortunate enough to be, in similar situations as well throughout the years. And I'm the same similar to you. If I'm sitting next to someone, I get chatty. I have a conversation and want to learn more about them and what they're doing, and maybe why we're on the same plane. Sometimes it can, change the future and change the direction and path that we're all going on, which is always exciting. And that's the great thing about, humans, is that those random acts really can change the things that we're doing. So that's really exciting. And of course, today's topic is all about AI. How can we go through a couple of episodes without talking about AI, which is getting difficult these days? And it's really, we're seeing a lot of evolution, especially in the last year to two, where we're seeing a lot of the GPT engines really change how we interact with computers from a human perspective as well. So what's some of the things you're saying, the trends this year from both the defense side of things and also the attack? How is it changing the way we protect our businesses and protect a way of life?
That's a great question, and a lot to unpack there. I think let's start with how we're starting to see AI impact the quantity and the fidelity and the efficacy of attacks from threat actors in the wild. If you look back 4 or 5 years ago, the quantity of attacks was overall lower. And the quality, the fidelity of them was also dramatically lower. And I think that with the advent of generalized large language models and the ease and availability of access to those, we're starting to see that entire landscape change. There used to be telltale signs when attacks were being launched. If you got a call, and I don't mean to sound insensitive here, but if you get a really, really thick accent on the other line, it might be a sign that this is a scam or this is an attack. But with all of the generative capabilities, all of that is changing. We see it in terms of attacks down the vein of phishing, where you can use real-time tools out there to mask really thick accents, to do real-time language translation. And so now instead of getting a call that you can tell it's somebody calling from Russia or from China or from deep in India, now you really can't tell. And that spans across everything. That I just spoke about was with voice, but we see it also with the fidelity of things as basic as phishing emails, where now it's not like the prince in some African country that's emailing you that he has 10 bitcoins for you or whatever. Now they're really well crafted. And if you take the rise of AI and you pair that with the availability of information about just about everybody that's on the dark web, those two things, when you combine them, become incredibly dangerous. And we see attacks now where hackers will find a target. They'll use tools like LinkedIn, and they find somebody that's working at a company that they want to attack, and then they'll find out their the systems that they have access to. They look on the dark web and they'll get basic information about them, like what is their address, what's their date of birth, what's their social security number. And for the vast majority of people out there, that information is just available on the dark web. And then you pair that with a sophisticated AI model that can call into an IT help desk and present all of those pieces of information that a hacker or that the help desk would be looking for to verify your identity. Then they can get credentials reset. They get the MFA disabled. We've seen attacks like this happening. I think the MGM attack that happened at this point is probably a year ago or a year and a half ago. That's
Right.
precisely what they did. So the quality of attacks is increasing dramatically. The number of attacks that are launched is increasing dramatically. And I think one of the scariest things here is the number of successful attacks is also increasing. And so when you pair the sophistication and the evolution of AI with all of that data that's available on the dark web, it's a pretty wild world. And I think that we're just starting to see the tip of the iceberg there.
Absolutely. I completely agree. For me, I mean, I've been in this industry for such a long time now that even the accuracy and the authenticity of a lot of the phishing and vishing is getting to the point where it's even difficult for professionals to even detect as well. I'm based in Estonia, and I can kind of confirm, with the Estonian language, it was always a protection for the society here because it was a complex language. It was very difficult for attackers to, automate the translation. So you always were able to find errors and mistakes in the phishing campaigns. And now with, GPT engines, that translation is done in real time and it's perfect. Even to the point where I think, attackers are now realizing that perfection is not like a human. So they're adding little bits of imperfect perfection into their algorithms to make it like, let's make a few mistakes. So it really does look like a human. So it's really getting to the point where, these types of campaigns and scams are getting to being perfect.
Yeah.
It's not just about the written text, to your point, it's about voice. It's even video. We've seen scams where they're able to real-time impersonate video that, it might look like executives or their colleagues in the background. And to your point, it's about getting new credentials or credentials reset, but it's also about onboarding devices as well and getting the ability to access that more information that can then be used for lateral moves or can be used for business email compromise or invoice fraud. And we're seeing these accelerate at a really, really alarming rate. What things, since it's to a point where now we're relying heavily on technology, what things are you seeing, to help us be able to identify what's the best practices to be able to determine some of these things, that to be able to, what the old traditional things of doing cybersecurity awareness training is not really efficient today because all the things we've been taught to detect is no longer there. What things can we do in order to really reduce these types of threats?
God, Joseph, that is the question of the hour, isn't it? It's a really good question, too. I think when I look at the way that we can protect ourselves, I would say it comes down to three things: people, process, and technology. Every single one of those is essential. We work really closely with a lot of large enterprises, and this is top of mind for them. And I think that importantly, you need to focus a lot on technology and making sure that all elements of your IT infrastructure and your security stack are really robust. And then making sure that you have process in place within your organization that people know of, and it's simple enough that they can follow it. And then the last, and I would say the stickiest part of this is the people aspect of it, because humans are infallible. We can make tech that's incredibly robust, but people are people, and they're always going to take actions, either intentionally or accidentally, that can introduce a lot of risk to the organization. And so I think that making sure people are trained on the attacks that are happening today. And the challenge is that when you look at how the market typically solves for that,
Mhm.
it's with like legacy security awareness training. And if you've worked in corporate America or a large company somewhere, you know these things. You do it once a year, it's 30 minutes, it's really generalized, and it's basically like, don't click on things. And that's the TLDR of the training. I think that we need a paradigm shift in the space to really holistically understand the risk that an individual brings to an organization, understanding the implicit risk of the role that they're in. Obviously, like a marketing intern, if they get breached, there's not as much of a business impact as if, say, the EA to the CFO gets breached. There's a much bigger difference there. And then actually looking at the threats that are going after that archetype of person, and then training them on that, and as much as possible, dynamically adapting security controls around individuals instead of just having the castle walls built around the organization as a whole. I think it's very important to have them dynamically put around individuals to help to protect the individuals that introduce the most risk to an organization. So when you look at those three things together, the marriage of people, process, and technology, I think that is really the best way that we can protect ourselves from this. And also, I think it's important that we look at threat intelligence when we understand what are the bleeding edges of attack. Because one thing that we've noticed within our company and the customers that we work with is there's a shift happening. I think when you look back 5 to 7 years ago, email phishing was the main vector of attack that hackers would try to get into large enterprises with. And for a time, that was tremendously effective. But when we look at the space around email, I mean, you look at Abnormal Security, they're one of the new players in the SEG market. They're great. And they're able to build technology to protect the inbox. So we see a shift now of threat actors moving off of corporate devices and things that the enterprise has direct control of. And they're moving on to off-channel and encrypted apps where they know that they can have direct access to an individual without the eyes of the enterprise on that. And so now they're finding people's WhatsApps, their Telegram, their Signal, their Viber account, whatever it is, and they're reaching out to people there. And especially for BPO companies or people with employees in low-cost delivery centers, threat actors have a lot of success going after them and offering a small bribe for customer information. So I think that really being honest with ourselves and looking at where are attacks happening today and how do we protect ourselves from today's attacks and not yesterday's attacks.
Absolutely. It kind of reminds me of some of the projects I've worked on over the years. I remember a while back working with a large transportation organization, and they had a cybersecurity awareness training. And it was really static. It was, we were looking at it from a very much a technology perspective and not from a human side of things. And it was very much that everyone had to do the same awareness training. It wasn't personalized in any way whatsoever. And we realized very quickly that after about 6 months of doing this project, we were failing, and we knew we were failing because we got so much friction with the employees that we were delivering it to. They hated it. We were causing them, preventing them from doing their real job. This was a hurdle that we were putting in the way. And ultimately, when we kind of took all of the data that we had, we realized we had to do something differently. And what we ended up doing was we stack ranked what we could stack rank, because in some countries you're not allowed to stack rank employees against each other. But where we could do it, we were able to see that, let's do it from a risk-based approach. Rather than targeting, some people in the organization didn't have computers. Why would we give them cybersecurity awareness training if they weren't operating technology at all? So it kind of you're doing a lot of waste as well. So we did it from a risk-based approach. And then I remember we were challenged because we were trying to figure out how to communicate. And I remember it was a day where, fortunately enough, we were sitting in this really nice conferencing room, and we're all standing at the whiteboard going, what do we do? What do we do? And there was a lot of noise and racket from one of the rooms down the corner. And we were like, what's all this noise? Can someone go tell them to be quiet? And this one person went out, he came back and said, well, today is actually bring your kids to work day. And it was actually a bunch of kids in the next room that were making a racket. So we thought, that's interesting. He said, a little bit like children. Let's have a conversation with them. And, so we brought them into the room. We got permission, can we ask them some questions about technology and stuff? And it was really enlightening because they were very direct and very honest, and they thought outside the box. They didn't have the kind of like curses that we would typically have, because you get so ingrained in things that you think there's no other way. And ultimately, I remember, the kids said, "Oh, why don't you do it as a comic book?" Because, people love comics. Well, it's easier for them to understand from images than it is text. And we're like, oh my goodness. So we end up doing our IT policy as a comic book. And then somebody else put their hand up and said, "Oh, why don't you put it in the bathrooms? Because everyone needs to go to the bathroom at least once a day." We're like, oh, that's interesting. So really intriguing, because I think what we're seeing is this evolution of awareness training to deal with all of these latest types of threats. And to your point, one of the biggest things that came out of that project, and I think this was one of the most fascinating things, was as we went through it, and that moment with having the kids in the room, what we end up realizing that cybersecurity doesn't start in the office, in the corporate walls, and it doesn't start with the employees. It actually starts with their social sphere and their family, the people around them. And that was one of the things, is when we actually had that message, the executives of the company said, what we're going to do is we're now going to extend cybersecurity to the entire employee's family. We're going to move security out. We're going to democratize it. We're going to make it available and push the security perimeter beyond just the office walls and the office computers to their employees' home computers and home devices. Because to your point, is most of the attackers' way in is not through the company devices, it's through your personal devices that are your company devices that you're accessing personal content with. There's so many messaging apps out there that everyone has to be part of a group, has to be staying connected. And if you're just monitoring corporate email, you're probably missing majority of the threats that's out there. And even recently, this past week in Estonia, we also had major threats that went to schools through a lot of the messaging apps as well. So it means really we have to start understanding about how the new attackers are thinking. What's their new ways of gaining initial access, or to compromising, or to getting employees to do things that they shouldn't do. And really, it does mean that we really have to start thinking about personalizing security, because not all employees are equal. As I mentioned, not all employees are using even technology in the companies. We have to start thinking about, how do we make sure that this employee has access to certain types of data? They have certain roles. They have certain social connections within the company. What's the right size awareness training for that person, individual? And I think this is really where we start thinking about is, the people, technology, and process is about how do we understand the data better ourselves and make sure that we personalize the training so that the employee gets the right amount of training, and also more specific to the role that they're doing. So any thoughts around some of those examples or ideas?
Yeah, what you said just landed with me so profoundly, because the one size fits all approach is dead. It does one thing. It ticks the box for GRC, where
Yep.
you can report out to regulators that we trained everybody on cybersecurity, but it does nothing to move the needle on the actual cybersecurity posture of these organizations. And so I think that it's critically important to really take a holistic look, and as much as possible to be data driven, and to put together almost risk profiles for each person within an organization. And that has so many factors that go into it. Like, what are they working with? Do they even have access to a computer? Many people don't, or they don't have access to a computer that's web enabled, or to anything but internal email. And so the risk there is much smaller versus somebody who is accessing all of the corporate systems on their personal device, potentially when they're traveling to a different country. Very different risk profiles there. And I also think that real-time intervention and really meeting people where they're at is becoming absolutely essential, because the relationship between the security apparatus of an organization and the actual employees of an organization has historically been adversarial. And you mentioned that a little bit earlier, where employees resent the fact that they're needing to take any of these trainings, because they watch it, they see the content, they're like, this isn't that, like, I don't actually know how to secure myself more from watching this 20-minute video that just tells me not to click on anything. And so I think that really understanding everybody's risk, and then training them on only the things that are pertinent to them, and also doing it in a form factor that everybody is used to now, which oftentimes is short form content. And so it doesn't need to be a 3-hour endeavor to train people. Give them real time intervention with bite sized learning that allows them to course correct in real time. And then also empowering the organization to have insight into where risk lies. They need to take an eyes wide open approach to this. That's something that's historically been challenging. A large financial institution that we work closely with, it's very interesting because in our conversations with their security team and their CISO, they basically said, yeah, within our our stack, we know exactly where risk lies, and we've done a lot to make it very robust. And any elements that remain that still introduce risk are on the roadmap for us to fix and to improve. But on the other side of that, when we look at the human population, we have no insight into where risk lies there. And if you look at just the basic data, I think it's published by the FBI and a few other agencies that are out there, but 9 out of 10 attacks happen because of human error. And so making sure that we do everything to diminish the adversarial relationship and build a relationship that really empowers people to do the work that they're hired to do, but also to protect themselves at the same time.
Absolutely. I think one of the things I've found over the years is, for me, is that when you personalize the training and make it, it's not about the company, but it's the employees who are benefiting. So you have to reverse the message. So the employee wants to do the training. They want to do it because it's not just about protecting the company, it's about actually the employee and their personal lives as well. So when you change the context, you change the messaging, that it's all about, we're giving this for you. We're doing it for security for you, for your personal sphere and your social sphere. It's going to make your family more beneficial from doing this. It's an addition, and at the same time, the company will benefit from it. That changes the whole narrative of things. It really makes the employee realize that actually, yeah, the company, it's almost like giving them something free that's going to make their personal lives better. It's a benefit.
Exactly.
In many cases, you want to make it a benefit and not more of that GRC checkbox approach. And I can't tell you how many times I've had to do that in my career. Some people I know get their pets to watch it while they're doing something else. They put the pet in front of the screen, give them something dangly to watch.
Yeah.
Are they really paying attention? But it absolutely is to check off that regulatory compliance piece. And the attackers know that, and they probably even know when the schedule is, so they probably will target it mid-year or a few months beforehand.
Exactly.
And really know when those organizations, because typically it's end of year, it's October, November is when the checkbox has to be done because they want to be compliant for the new regulation or compliance by January. So
exactly,
very predictable, and I think really we have to start thinking about how do we change that. How do we focus around the employees' benefit? Something that they want to do.
I think you're spot on with that. And you brought up something that I just want to touch on as well. In terms of making the relationship non-adversarial, one of our learnings as we've built the company, it was a very distinctive moment. We were building out a phishing capability because we want to be able to replicate all of the types of attacks that hackers are doing. It's not just email anymore. It's deep fakes, it's phishing, it's off-channel encrypted apps. We replicate all of those attacks. And as we were building out our phishing capability, part of that was doing voice cloning. And so we spun up some GPUs. We put on all the models that we needed to. And I remember it was me and the engineers were sitting there, and we have a salesperson on the team named Kayla, and she's a delight and one of our funniest employees. And so we got about 10 seconds of her voice off of a recorded sales call. And then the devs made a clone of it, and we were making it just say like silly, ridiculous things. And there was a fervor among the engineers as we did this. It was like we were laughing so hard and just having a great time. And it was one of these moments of an unlock of like, we're having a great time with this and we're learning a ton from this. Why do we not give this to end users when they're learning about phishing instead of just taking a 2-minute training on it? Why don't we give them the ability to like record 10 seconds of their voice? We'll put that into our model. We'll make a clone of it, and then we'll let them have this experience of hearing things in their voice or typing something in and having it say it. And we've noticed huge upticks in engagement with that because then it's a fun thing. And there's an organic kind of like spread of this throughout organizations. We see it where one person does it, they share it to their friend, then that person goes and plays in the vishing playground is what we call it. But yeah, it's like let's not just train people with kind of old school long form content. Let's let this be more of a workshop where they can learn about it. And then after that, when the light bulb goes off and they see how real this threat vector is, then we give them a couple tools to help to protect themselves. And like you mentioned as well, it's not just for the organization, it's also for individuals, their friends, and their families. Voice cloning, we see that so much these days. And you get a call, it's a spoofed number, it sounds like a loved one, and they say, I was traveling and I got arrested, I'm in a bind, I need you to send $5,000 or I'm absolutely screwed. And we want to give these individuals the tools that they need to protect themselves while they're working, but then also to protect their loved ones, their friends, and their family as well. And I think that giving them the knowledge in a way that they're actually keen to learn it is absolutely critical.
Absolutely. I remember the case last year in India where that was an accelerating scams that was happening with Indian families, and to the point where even the government had to step in order to intervene with the threats. And absolutely, we do need to make our industry more fun. We need to make it more entertaining because it is very much a scary industry, and we live in a scary world from a lot of what we see from the threat side, and we do need to make it entertaining. It always reminds me back. I've done a number of phishing campaigns over the years, and I'm a perfectionist. I always try to do it perfect. And the one organization that got me was the one where employees were so talkative. They talked and communicated so much that the moment, you sent the phishing campaign in, that they chatted, did you see this? Did you get this as well? And they started chatting. And all of a sudden, when the collective together started looking at this, they realized it was a scam. It was a phishing campaign. So when you put all those minds together and they start seeing something, they're like, this is interesting. And they basically caught it right away. And I always find that, yes, if you can get your employees to talk more and communicate more and share, the collective minds together can actually be a better defense rather than individuals trying to figure it out themselves. Because ultimately, you're trying to get one person to do it. But if you get everyone working together, then it means that they'll also report it quickly. You shouldn't be afraid to speak out. You shouldn't be afraid to report it. Therefore, it's a collective minds working together can actually be a very, very strong security resiliency for a company. And at the same time, it makes it fun. So that's one of the things is I always like ways that does broaden the security into the social sphere. And I also do like when it actually makes it entertaining as well, because we do need to laugh in our day jobs. We do need to
Exactly.
So tell me more. Do you have any resources or any reports or areas that's for the audience that they can go to if they're interested in learning more about some of the the things where you have the tools for playing around with voice cloning and listening to what they sound like, and maybe saying some interesting catchphrases or mentions. Where can they find more information if they want to learn more?
Absolutely. We actually just published a couple months ago our first threat intelligence report that we put together. Dune Security, we typically work with large enterprises, and so it's millions of end users, and so we have copious amounts of data, and it's a pretty interesting report detailing exactly what we're talking about here, where the evolution of the threat landscape. And I think that besides maybe when the internet was invented, I think that we're at least that big or bigger of an inflection point. And the rate of change and the rate of evolution that we're seeing in the threat landscape is wild. I really think we're kind of entering the wild, wild west of cybersecurity on so many different fronts. You like on the people side and on the threat actor side, but then also even with the technology we're building with like MCP servers and new ways for tech to talk to other tech and the security implications that has. And so we do have a threat intel report that's very interesting. It's on Dune.security, and I can provide a link for you to share out to your audience as well.
Absolutely. I'll make sure that in the show notes, I'll put a link so it's easy for them to access and follow up later. It just reminds me is that, as I'm finding, as a lot of this innovation is changing how we communicate with the devices. The old times of, using a mouse and keyboard, I think we're getting close to that no longer being even something we'll interact with the computers with. And it's going to be basically our mind directly connected, or our voice, or other kind of gestures and motions. I was laughing the other day. I was actually in my shed trying to measure something, and I said, "Hey Siri," and about 10 devices went, what do you want? What do you want? I only want one of you. And every one of them started recording, and was like, "Oh, stop." Quite a funny moment. And that's the world we live in. Even sometimes when we join, virtual meetings and online meetings, there's about 3 or 4 people on the call, and about 15 transcribers and scribblers and note takers. It's like we all have this many like little digital versions of ourselves. It gets quite comical. So, but it is an interesting time and world we live in. So, Michael, it's fantastic. If the audience do have questions that they would like to go to yourself, what's the best way that they can connect with you if they want to do follow up and have further questions?
Absolutely. I would love to engage with any members of the audience. My LinkedIn, it's Michael Waite at Dune Security. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to continue this conversation with anybody who's interested to chat. I'm relatively new to the cybersecurity space, been in it for 3 years at this point, but I can't think of a better time to be in this space, because it's just every day is an evolution. Every day is different. And yeah, happy to connect with anybody that watches your show.
Fantastic. Excellent. I'll also make sure to include the direct LinkedIn link to the audience in the show notes as well. So Michael, it's been wonderful having you on, and really it's been an intriguing conversation. I always enjoy, having these conversations. It's the favorite part of my week, because it really enlightens me, and it gives me a lot of different perspectives in some of the ways that we work in order to make the world a safer place and make everyone have a digital safe life as well. So many thanks for being on the show today.
Joseph, thank you. Thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate it. This is my favorite thing to talk about. It's a pleasure connecting with you. Really appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you. So for the audience, this is the Security by Default podcast. I'm the host, Joe Carson, bringing you episodes every 2 weeks. If this has been interesting for you, please go and subscribe, share with your colleagues, share with friends, and really bringing you different topics to really help enlighten you, to give you new ideas in order to make the company you work for a safer place, but also the world that you live in a safer place as well. So stay safe, everyone. Until the next episode, take care and thank you. Well, that's a wrap for this episode of the Security by Default podcast. I'm Joseph Carson, and again, many thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe and share, and please stay safe. And until the next time, we'll see you soon.